Welcome back, baseball fans, to the Fall League 77, 78, 79, 80. Preparing the draft for the upcoming Fall League. Continuing with some more draft prep. In the last installment, we saw how we took a peek at the carry-on guys to see if we should be swapping out their current cards with another card from the other 3 years in the 4-year run here. And now we're going to take a look now at the keepers, the carry-on and keeper guys. And these are guys whose cards aren't in the league, but the team says we want them to come back. So there's going to be 4 choices for each of these players. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how I can use the sorting of the spreadsheet to make this a little easier. And it's currently sorted based on the review of the carry-on players. So the first sort was by team, and then it was an alphabetical sort by player name. That allowed me to look at all of the dark green players who were carry-on guys who are in the league with that card in that year, and comparing it to his other cards. And so in this particular sort, what I'm going to do is, step 1 of the sort is I'm going to separate the hitters and the pitchers, because eventually I want a criteria of an individual hitting and pitching statistic, and therefore they need to be separated. So the first step in doing that is to select a sort of hitters and pitchers and then separated by the keepers. If that's done, the alphabetizing should be left alone because that has not been interrupted. So I'm going to do a sort of the column AO and the column C in ascending order. And when I do that to the database, it starts out, here's your column C, indicating the zeros, which are rookies and free agents. When I page down, eventually I'll see a block of this blue keeper color. Green, light green, and then some more free agents that are encumbered alphabetically here. But then here you have the keepers. And these are hitters starting alphabetically with Mark Belanger. And these are all keeper hitters. Okay. And then after the keeper hitters alphabetically, there's going to be another group once we get to the pitchers of that same color. We'll page down. And we page down. Now we see the next group of K keepers, starting with Reggie Cleveland. These are all sorted by P, pitcher. So the hitters and the pitchers have been separated into 2 different keeper rooms. The next step is that all those keepers I could sort for hitters. I could sort under the column of OPS, which is column Z in this particular spreadsheet, for each player, since we'll retain the alphabetical sort, but we will switch. So I'm going to highlight all the keeper hitters, and then I'll do a sort alphabetical and then by OPS. So I'm going to scroll down, get through all the teams. The teams are in alphabetical order, and then the players within the team are in alphabetical order. If I just sorted by OPS, it would be the players would be out of order. So the column would be F, column F for player name in ascending order. And then within the player, we're looking at Z, and then descending order of OPS. And when we do that, Now we have the players are in alphabetical order. Oh, you know what I wanted to do? You know, I really should have done team first. I should have done D. I can do a three-way. I'm going to do that again. D, F, and then, yeah. I want to keep the teams together in alphabetical order, too. So I'm going to do that again. D, F, and Z. Under the hitters. So it's D in ascending order, F in ascending order, and Z in descending order. Okay, there we go. So for hitters, for Baltimore, it's Lee May is a keeper, and when we look at his OPS column, which is here, highlighted, we can always make this bold. Just for easy viewing. There we go. Lee May, he has 4 years to consider, and his highest OPS is going to be the first row here, 722. It's in the year of 1977. The other thing you can also figure out is that when you look at all 4 of the years, it's not much. There's not a lot of play there. 722, 79, 700, and 690. So you could throw your hands up in the air and say, you know what, for that particular player, it doesn't really matter too much which of the 4 years you pick. It doesn't jump off the page and make this an easier process. The easier process will be to look at the cards. You know, eventually when you look at the cards and just eyeball the cards and see which Lee May card you want to pick in this particular instance. Is it, you know, does he play first base or does he hit lefties better than righties? So there's other things to consider when his numbers are generally about the same through the years. And so what's really interesting about this other part of the sort was, as we go back to it again, this is in team order, okay? And so 2 teams alphabetically are ahead of Baltimore, and that would be Arizona and Atlanta. And they're not represented here. So why are they not represented here? They each have 4 keepers. Does that mean that the 4 keepers of each team, the 8 keepers, are all pitchers? Well, let's go verify that. And when we go to that, and you find it, here's Arizona and Atlanta, pitcher, 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 pitcher. They are all pitchers. And in the case of Baltimore, 2 hitters, Belanger and Lee May, and 2 pitchers, McGregor and Palmer. So we saw Lee May and Belanger. Now I want to do the same thing in the pitching segment. And it should be the 8 Arizona and Atlanta pitchers, and then the 2 Baltimore pitchers. And the statistic to sort under is WHIP, walks and hits per innings pitched, which is a column AH in ascending order. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use columns DF and AH this time. Okay, so we'll go data, sort, D, F in ascending order, and then AH in ascending order. And let's see how this turns out. All right, when we do that, we should get 8 Arizona and Atlanta combined pitchers. And when we do that, Reggie Cleveland is the first guy to pop up, and when we go over to his WHIP, oh, we still have the high WHIP there. We want that in ascending order, don't we? I already hit ascending order for that. So it's AH. We want that in ascending order, lowest to highest, because it's a pitching stat, not a hitting stat. So we'll try that again here. Yeah, I hit descending instead of ascending. That was my mistake. Okay. All right, so Reggie Cleveland is still at the top here, but now we have his best year at the very top at 1.17 whip, and then it goes 1.28 and 1.33. So what is that year? And that would be this here. And this number here is year 78, card number 339. That is Reggie Cleveland's card. And we talked about, remember Arizona, Atlanta, there should be 8 of their pitchers. Well, there's Arizona's Cleveland, LaRoche, Roberts, and Stone. And then Atlanta's Apotica, Boggs, of which you have one choice for each, Devine, and Torrealba. And then remember we said Baltimore had 2 pitchers to go with their 2 hitters, McGregor and Palmer. So you see that's how the sort can work to instantly give you some valuable information. In just glancing, I've learned a lot of things already. First of all, Atlanta has no leverage here because you have to go with the 77 Apotica, the 80 Boggs, and the 77 Pablo Torrealba, because that's the only year they exist. So again, if Atlanta gets boxed in here, and they want some other guys from the year of 1977, they could end up trading Apotica or Pablo Torrealba at some point during the draft, or for tokens. So that's the first thing I learned. Real quickly, as I page up to Steve Stone, who was let go, and Arizona wound up with him. Sure enough, his first year, his lowest whip year, coincides with his best year, where he was a 25-game winner with a 3.23 ERA. He really was a beneficiary of of some great Baltimore offense, giving him some run support that year. A 25-game winner, but his whip is 1.297. So, it's a little bit on the buyer beware side. And of course, Baltimore didn't really need to protect Steve Stone because they were knee-deep in pitchers. They had 4 or 5 starters, probably better than Steve Stone during that period. So with that, I can then start to process the list of keepers, and this will save a lot of time during the draft because I can quickly look over here to determine which year I draft the player, instead of having to look through all this information when that team is on the clock. So by doing all this now, it really speeds up the drafting process. I'm going to pause the video now and come back and look and see all the grades for all these players. All right, welcome back. We have done the full analysis of all the keeper hitters and pitchers. Looked at the entire set here to come up with the years we would like to pick the players if it's available. And there will, obviously, if there's no color indicated, it means that you're going to get the similar performance in any of the years, or at least 3 of the years in most cases. If there's an outlier year, you'll see a single shade of yellow. Some guys have 2 choices. Of course, you wouldn't see 4 choices because that's the same as 0 choices, right? So going down the list here, nothing stands out. I'll kind of just go to the ones that kind of stand out a little bit. Steve Stone in 1980 wins the Cy Young in the American League. The Braves are really stuck with 3 guys with single-year options: Apotica, Boggs, Pablo Torrealba, and then Devine's best year is 77. So they got kind of a mess on their hands. Again, you see 3 guys highlighted in a single year. You can't have 3 guys from one year. You can only take 2 from a year. So it seems like on draft day, Atlanta's going to have to make some more moves to figure out their pitching staff. They've struggled trying to get pitching during this era. All right, Baltimore, the strength of their team is their pitching, and Jim Palmer's 77 and McGregor's 79 are those 2 guys' best year of the 4. The Red Sox, defending world champs, Nothing really sticks out except for in their follow-up defending the crown campaign. Burleson will be a better fielding shortstop. Tion has another good year. Kerrigan doesn't really matter that much. Really nothing special about any of these guys on the Expos. Here's some good news for the Angels, is that in 79 you can check the boxes for Dan Ford and Bobby Grich, which is great. And then next year, in 1979, you can trade for Brian Downing, who will play for the California Angels in 79. It's like 326. All right. Now, this is the best team for keepers in the draft. I tip my hat and applaud the Chicago Cubs. Congratulations, Chicago Cubs. You can do it. You finished in last place. You have the first pick in the draft. Boy, this seems like, easy pickings here. Gosh, who do you pick first overall? But this is going to be a very improved team. And if you're following this and you're rooting for a team to go from worst to first, in this division, we talked about how great the Reds and Pirates were. It's time to jump on the Cub bandwagon and say, Bill Buckner wins a batting title in 1980. Dave Kingman hits 48 home runs in 1979. This Bill Madlock card was with the Giants, but he still hits 323, and the Cubs are going to hold on to him, before dealing him to the Giants. And even Bobby Mercer has a good year in 77, and I think he still has some center field options left in him, or he's explicitly a corner outfielder at this point. So that's hitting it out of the park there. 4 guys, 4 separate years, which means you can still pick other players from those 4 years. So that's the perfect draft scenario. And no other team has the perfect draft scenario. All right, across town, the White Sox, nothing really to talk about here. These 3 guys. And the Reds. So we talked about the arrow going up for the Cubs. For the Reds, they kind of stepped in it last year. And they didn't get in the World Series. They were the number 1 seed. They lost in the playoffs. And it's 77, Griffey, Morgan, and Geronimo. And for Geronimo, he's near the end of his rope anyway. I mean, he hit 376. That was an outlier. Morgan is going to come down because back-to-back MVPs in 75, 76. 77, he's still good. Then he starts to fade until he moves on to the Houston Astros. Griffey will have a good year in 79 and in 1981. We could see the Reds start to stumble slightly until they get some of those 1981 players. The 1981 Reds, where Johnny Bench incredibly hit 300 again. Don't know where that came from. Foster had a big year. Mario Soto and Tom Seaver had big years in 1981, the year of the strike. So that's next year. So the Reds might need to be reloading this year. Cleveland. Well, Jim Kearns has a good 79. The Rockies have some flexibility with their pitchers. Reed and Manji, you have your choice of years for those guys. With the Tigers, 1 more year out of Fidrich, 1 more really good year out of LaFleur, and Lolich, Mickey Lolich comes out of the bullpen for 1 good year in 78. Florida, Tom Bergmeyer can give them some flexibility. You see, we have 2 good guys in 1979 plus Bergmeyer, but we can always say, well, let's go with the 80 Bergmeyer instead. Astros are showing some flexibility. Rao here and here. J.R. Richard, he had a stroke during the second half of the baseball season, but his ERA is below 2, and you can use that card for the whole season. It doesn't go in the 4-man rotation, but it's an incredible card. And then, of course, Cedeno, a lifetime Astro, always has big years, and Dave Collins, who they stole from the Cincinnati Reds, has a couple good years. Next, the Kansas City Royals. That's supposed to be an 80, right? No. So this is what's going to happen. The Kansas City Royals are going to say, let's take George Brett's 1980 card, and we get to use that card for all 4 years. And so this is your team in the American League. This is the new villain in the American League. You thought it was the Yankees, but it's really going to be the Royals are going to have the best roster for this period. Okay, so moving on to this, that top of the rotation, Leonard and Gura, their best years are sooner than later. So Kansas City didn't get to the World Series till 1980, but Gura and Leonard, their years were kind of okay. But the 77 Leonard and Gura and the 78 Otis to go along with Brett, they need to win the World Series within the next 2 years, maybe back-to-back, the next two Carryover Leagues. All right, the Dodgers. What's interesting here is how consistent Steve Garvey and Bill Russell are, because it doesn't really matter what year you pick. And actually, technically, Don Sutton, it doesn't either. The exclamation point is basically to say he's good all these years, but yeah, he's amazing in 1980. Las Vegas, you get a nice performance by Willie Randolph, good glove, stealing bases, getting on base. Dave Winfield's best year with the Padres is there, 79. 77 Torres, most noted for pitching a complete game in Game 6 World Series winner for the Dodgers. That's the game that Reggie hit the 3 home runs. Torres was the pitcher that day. He was getting knocked around. It's funny. That's a great World Series game to check out. He was getting knocked around in the first 3 innings. Throws a complete game. You don't see that anymore in baseball. Break up the Milwaukee Brewers, the young guns. They're starting to put it together, folks, in this era. Harvey's Wallbangers. Lezcano, Gorman Thomas have career years in 79. Twins, I'm just not crazy about the Twins anymore. They, Butch Winnegar and Roy Smalley just were good players, but they never were really great players, and they really could have used them to be great players, and the Twins would have been better off. All right, so Koosman has one good year with the Mets in 77. This Tim McCarver outlier year hits 320. Rose's best years is in 79 with the Phils, but the Mets are going to go with his 77 card at third base. And believe it or not, Pat Zachary, if they punch the card for the 1980, you get 4 good, decent years out of Pat Zachary with an ERA of around 3, which is better than if you averaged out what he did all 4 of those years for the Mets as a return on investment for the Tom Seaver trade. Reggie at 300 in 1980. Thurman Munson, 77. He was actually better coming off the MVP award than when he won the MVP award in 76. Nettles, Gold Glove defense in 78 and 32 bombs. The Oakland A's, another confusing team. I can't quite figure this team out. Yeah, they're kind of in rebuild mode. The Ohio players, expect big things from these guys. Mike Norris has a big year in 1980, and Vida Blue has a big year in 78 and 80. The front of their rotation is going to be set. They got a good setup guy in Grant Jackson. So the pitching for the Ohio players is going to be really good. Great news for the Phils. We talked about the magic year of 1980. However, you can't get all these guys in one off season. The good news is, for Carlton, McBride, and McGraw, the consolation is their 77 cards are good. And the more good news is, if you take their 77 card, you only have to take it for 1 year. Then next year you can pick their 80 card. So you've got options for all 3 of those players. All right, Pirates, nothing special here. They're just keeping on in that division. The expansion Portland team, Jerry Royce has a good 1980. Lockwood gives you a couple options. The Padres, who surprised everybody, well, Randy Jones is going to come down a lot. He still is good in 78 and 79, but not nearly as good as he was in 76. Raleigh Fingers will give him a dependable closer for a couple years. Garr is kind of past his prime. Manny Trio, that's a great get. He wins a World Series ring for the Phillies, but the Padres snagged him, so the Phillies are going to have to figure out another option at second base. Seattle, none of these guys really stand out except Rudy May in 1980. Actually, as a left-handed pitcher, gets righties out better than lefties. The Giants, this is a really crappy era for the Giants. They don't, you know, and they protected all pitchers, and 3 of the 4 pitchers' best year are 1978. So they could push Barr to 79 and go Moffitt, Montefusco 78, and Lavelle 77. None of that is really that amazing. All right, the Cardinals, they got a couple nice guys here, or at least one. Keith Hernandez, 1979 card. Most valuable player, 344 and a 1 at first base. His best year ever. So that will help the Cardinals. And boy, the Cardinals and the Cubs are improving, and the Reds and Pirates are kind of like treading water a little bit in that division. Now, if you watched the video about the trade, off-season trades, you saw that Texas went after John Matlack and Marty Patton, and they can get good results. 78 Matlack and 77 Patton both had pretty good years. And Rusty Staub hits 300 for the Rangers in 1980. And lastly, Toronto, lifetime. Doyle Alexander, always play for them in my Carryover League. They got 2 different options for him. And the other interesting little nugget here is that, well, it was in the other keeper league. It was about Ben Ogilvy, so it doesn't reflect here. Office and Saleta aren't particularly good. I think it was, yeah. Let me go back to see where Ogilvy was with Toronto. Right. So yeah, he's currently in the carry-on list with his 78 card. And that's because Ogilvy started out with, I think, the Red Sox, and he played for the Tigers for a little bit. So he ended up in Toronto. But they should probably think of trading him to the Brewers in the next couple years and getting some good assets in return. But anyway, that's it for the carry-ons and keepers. Hope you're enjoying the videos. We'll see you next time.